In Unit 13, Lesson 5, we're going to talk about some rules for congruent triangles. So congruent means that they are the same shape and the same size. So congruent means the shapes are exactly the same. There are 5 rules for congruency. Congruency is a fancy word for meaning it's the same thing. So here's rule number 1. If 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to 3 sides of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So if you have all 3 sides, so that would be side, side, side. If you have all 3 sides the same, that means that those two triangles are congruent. So if this side equals this side, this one with 1 dash equals this one with 1 dash, and the one with 3 equals the one with 3. So that's a side, side, side. They are congruent if they have both the same side, side, side. The next one is if 2 sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent and the 2 sides and the included angle of the other triangle are congruent, then the triangles are congruent. So this one would be side, angle, side. If you have these 2 sides and the angle, that locks the triangle into place so you can't move any of the other angles or sides around. So that one would be side, angle, side. So SAS, side, angle, side. The next one, if 2 angles and the included side of one triangle, so that would be 2 angles and the side in the middle of them, are congruent to 2 angles and the included side on the other triangle, then those triangles are congruent. So this one would be ASA, angle, side, angle. So if you have the angle, the side in between them, and the other angle, that locks that triangle in. You can't change the shape. You can't, so they would be congruent. And the next one, if 2 angles and a non-included side, that means the side that's not in the middle of them. So 2 angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent, and 2 angles and the non-included side of another triangle are congruent, then the 2 triangles are congruent. So this would be angle and a side. And I'm just checking at the top to see if they said, and they said SAA. So SAA, side, angle, angle. And the last one, if the hypotenuse and a leg, those are some crazy words, but you're going to learn those about Pythagorean theorem in 8th grade. Pythagorean theorem is a theorem about the sides of a right triangle. So these are right triangles because remember the little square means 90 degrees. So if you're given the hypotenuse, which is the longest side, the side across from the right angle, and you're given a leg, which is one of the sides that makes the right angle. So if you're given a hypotenuse and a leg, it's the same as the hypotenuse and the leg of the other one, then those triangles are going to be congruent. Now we have 2 rules for non-congruency. So these ones are relationships that will not make congruent triangles. The first one says there are 2 congruent sides with a congruent angle that is not between them. So if you have 2 sides and an angle not between them, so like side, side, angle, that is not a congruent triangle because it could change. If this side and this side are the same as on the other triangle, we could possibly move it here because the angle isn't locked in. And so it could still be the same length, but it might be folded in a little bit. So, or actually, I'm sorry, it should have been out. It could go out and still be the same triangle, but it doesn't work. So you cannot just look at 2 sides, the angle that's not in between them. So if you have 2 sides and the angle not in between them, it is not proof that it's congruent. And the last one is the angles. So if you have all 3 angles, so if you have 3 congruent angles and 2 different triangles, the lengths might not be the same. These are similar because the angles make them have the same shape, but they are not congruent because they might not be the same size. Okay, and now you're getting ready to do an escape room.